I was saying, which is not necessarily presentism, but when is a girl, what can we say about, in terms of science,
if you now consider,
when someone is physically and
if you now consider, what does the Quran actually give a guidance to?
Very nice to meet you.
You too. What does the Quran give, what kind of guidelines in terms of marriage? It doesn't.
No, I heard what you said.
No, it doesn't give you an age.
Right.
Yeah? So it tells you when they have reached the age of rushd, age of intellectual maturity.
Which is fine, right? No one's going to really argue.
So we can't just focus on an isolated example of the Prophet's marriage, which he did not say this is imposed, to be imposed on every individual Muslims. He didn't say that. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So I think we both understand, and we have the similar kind of understanding on this issue.
Yeah, the question is, you brought up a few things about what, people are making some bad arguments about this. Using the word pedophilia, I don't think really helps elaborate the discussion. The main question is, do we want to be marrying and having sex with girls of a certain age? Yeah? Is it reasonable to think that 9?
See, we are now again trying to...
And I will concede that in whatever traditions you want, Christian traditions, English royalty, whatever, this stuff has gone on all over the place. But as I said before, we've hopefully learned something about it. We don't know everything about it, but what present day knowledge now says, this doesn't seem to be very a good idea. We shouldn't marry girls
we should know that in Islam considers the principle of harm. If there's going to be any harm involved, that age, even though when they've just reached the age of maturity, then in terms of the puberty, this is not a good enough age to get married because there's an amount of harm involved. So Islam has quite clear principle in terms of what you can or you cannot do.
So was she older than that?
No, I'm saying if there's going to be harm done, then that is not the age. At a point where there will be no harm done, she's intellectually mature, physically mature, and then no harm involved, this is the time when you can say, yes, this is the guideline that gives you allowance for that.
Let me say this. This is a fairly soft assumption, and see what you say to this. I would say that it seems to me to be fairly unlikely that a girl of 9 would be physically or mentally ready to get married.
Depending on the social historical context.
Yeah, there can always be exceptions, but...
No, not exceptions. Not exceptions.
I would say that
as we were discussing earlier,
earlier,
I would disagree with you on this reason, that historically speaking, young girls who become women at the age of onset of puberty, they were also mature enough. So I give you an example of the Indian tradition, where a boy of 8-year-old is intellectually mature, and when he reaches age of puberty, he can be physically mature, and he can actually produce children. So if you look at this now, are you going to say now he has to wait until he becomes 20? I'm saying no. The age is not what determines when you get married. This is an artificial boundary that we put up for a reason. Okay, so Islam is quite flexible, where it hasn't set an age, but it gives you minimum conditions, if you want to call that. Minimum standards or conditions where this has to be at least attained before someone gets married.
Let's grant that the Quran gave sufficient guidance in this area. The question I was saying was that Muhammad married a woman who was 9. And I would say, without knowing any, I wasn't there, don't know the woman, but if you put the basic facts out there, are 9-year-olds ready for marriage? I would say I don't think I've ever seen a 9-year-old that would be ready for marriage. It seems incredibly unlikely. What would you say to that?
Sure. Have you seen in England where 8-year-old girls or women have become pregnant and then given birth when they were 9? It has happened in this country, in UK.
Happened,
yeah. So were they ready biologically?
Biologically, yes.
Yes. So you may question whether they're intellectually ready or not.
Biologically ready in terms of able.
Yeah, biologically able to.
As I said before, that science says that just because a woman has reached puberty and is able, doesn't mean her body is necessarily ready for it.
That's what I'm saying.
Sex might do a bit of harm.
That's what I'm saying. If there's any amount of harm involved, then obviously no. So Islam, as I said again, is flexible enough to give a universal guideline where you can apply this guideline anywhere in the world. You don't have to have some kind of bone density to find out your age and saying, I was discussing with a very intelligent young woman earlier, some time ago, saying you have to know your age, you have to be absolutely 18 and they can determine your born age. You don't need to. And people in Africa or
no disagreement there. There's a question of, it's a continuum, some are ready at earlier ages.
Yes.
We know
so
that.
it can
However,
be different to different people and different
culture.
culture.
Towards the edge, like 9 years old, I don't believe she was ready.
No, you may believe...
I'll say that. I don't think she was ready. What would you say?
I would say, we have to take case by case. Maybe there is an example here in Britain that she was ready. You can't just take your assumption that she wasn't ready, because this is what you hope that she's not ready, because she's quite young. She's just about reached the age of biological maturity. It doesn't mean she also automatically has attained intellectual maturity.
It wouldn't be a hope on my part, by the way.
An assumption.
I would hope that she was ready, because if she wasn't,
it's an assumption. Sorry, wrong words. It's an assumption.
Wasn't ready, it's an awful
It's an assumption.
And I think that's why this subject gets the kind of...
So can I ask you a question? If someone is intellectually mature and biologically mature at the age of 10, what do you consider?
If that was the case, the age doesn't matter. My contention is, I don't think that's likely at all.
You think it's not likely? What's not likely?
Incredibly.
What's not likely? Which one? The biology or intellectual maturity?
Intellectual maturity.
Right.
I don't think your brain's even done growing by that age.
Okay. At what age do we become intellectually mature?
I think for men it's later, and for girls it's earlier. So I think for men, I would say it's over 20 in terms of the development of your brain.
So according to your understanding, a 19-year-old shouldn't get married because they're not intellectually mature.
That's not what I said.
If you haven't, remember, generally, those people who are not intellectually mature, they shouldn't get married. That's what we were discussing.
If you wanted my opinion, I would say, it's probably better to get married a little later in your 20s for lots of other different reasons. Develop kind of, what you want out of life and what kind of person. There's lots of different reasons why you might not know enough when you're 18 to make a choice that's going to last, 40 or 50 years.
What determines intellectual maturity? Because we have very, very smart 11-year-olds studying in Oxford and Cambridge. We're talking about university, right? Colleges in Oxford. So this is degree level. Very smart. Are they intellectually mature or immature?
In terms of academics,
intellectual maturity. Not just academia, intellectual maturity.
Well, that maturity comes with, like I said, the further development of your brain.
No, this person, this young man, at the age of 11, they're going to Oxford and Cambridge.
Right.
Are you suggesting they're not intellectually mature? What's missing in their maturity?
There's probably quite a bit of social development that's missing.
Like?
Social development.
Like what? What are they missing in terms of social interaction? Are you saying they're unable to understand how to interact with society?
Your experience is what I
No,
said.
I'm giving examples to understand how do one become intellectually mature, what governs that process of maturation, and what are the factors of intellectual maturity. How do we measure it?
I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not going to go into that. I'm not going to try. But as I said, obviously, as you develop, you learn more. Your brain develops,
Sure.
you learn more.
But these individuals,
lots of.
I agree, as you grow on, but these individual young persons, at the age of 11, for example, they're able to understand, comprehend much better than we can, for example, as general people. So if we are consider ourselves as intellectually mature individuals, looking at their brain capacity or capability, they're far can outsmart us in terms of maturity in intellect. So,
ability, not necessarily.
So again, what is maturity determined by? You're saying maturity determined by experience.
Clearly, maturity doesn't stop at 18, does it?
No.
I don't know how old you are, but I'm sure you felt over a 10-year period,
so
you're quite, maybe not
are
a
they mature enough?
person.
Are they intellectually mature enough?
I think that's a better word, mature enough. We've determined that when you're 18, it seems that you're mature enough.
It's an arbitrary age from nowhere.
It is. But, a lot of people would discourage getting married there for the reasons that I said. You're better off waiting and not rushing.
Where did this age come from?
Sorry?
Decided by what?
Well, I mean, obviously there are physical factors that show you to have matured into an adult.
Someone who is 17 and a half and someone who's 18. Do you consider that their intellectual maturity is a huge difference or a slight difference?
Probably a slight difference.
Slight difference. So a 19-year-old and a 17-year-old, you really consider that their maturity intellectually, there's a difference?
It could be quite a bit. That depends upon the person.
Like what? Like what?
Huh?
Like what? A 17 and a 19-year-old.
Yeah. I mean, if I said, without trying to strap ourselves down with going through lots of psychological thing, if I said someone's acting like a baby, you would know what I'm talking about. Some people act like babies. Some people acting like
Yeah, like
babies.
many 40-year-old here acts like a baby, for example. You've seen yourself. It doesn't mean that they shouldn't get married. So we should not put, these obstacles in the forms of guidelines. We're saying this is the only.
Let me make a distinction. I'm not trying to make a distinction between 17 and 19-year-olds and what. I'm not trying to finesse this and get it down to a right age. I'm saying when you go that far down the spectrum, down to 9 years old, I think it's really unlikely that that person is physically or mentally ready. And I have to say, I don't think you could show me a case of a person, and maybe you can, which I'm going to. This is why I'm kind of going here. Showing me a person that's ready for it, I would say.
What about 13? What about 14? What about 15? Because
Much better, isn't it?
Yeah.
13.
So you would say, look, you would say a 15-year-old is okay because we have many girls getting married, 15 years old, having children, and their children having babies again, and then she becomes a grandmother when she's not even 30.
It's a world of difference between a 15-year-old and a 9-year-old.
Fine.
We're
So
not talking about
fine.
we're not finessing.
Fine. So the more developed you are, the better you are in terms of the prospects of less harm, right?
Yeah, I mean, here's what we don't want to happen, right? What you don't want to happen to a girl that gets married to her is, one, the physical harm that comes with a body that's not ready for intercourse.
Absolutely.
And as I've said, science has said that when a girl has reached puberty, she is not necessarily ready, and most likely not ready for intercourse. That's number one. Number two is...
Can we talk about number one first? That's a bit odd from science, because your body, the biology determines that you're actually now getting ready to conceive. That's the transformation that's happening in your body.
That's part of it. Everything's good. There's multivariables in everything.
No, if you think about it, this puberty is a transformation where a girl, for example, develops into a woman who can bear a child. That's the development, that's the transformation. And then to say that actually she's not ready is a contradiction in terms. Because this change is happening for that very reason, to conceive a child.
Yeah, I mean, we have to go into the science and say why they're saying that, right? I mean, because things don't happen all at once. I mean, generally your body changes slowly.
They are saying, I know some of the reports a long time ago, the reason why, because in certain cultures in certain countries, because of malnutrition, because of poverty, these women, young women, would have a very bad pregnancy.
Yeah.
The child would not develop, will have development delays later on, and conditions of undue development. It's because of these nutritional deficiencies during child pregnancy. So if you can argue, if now you have a young woman in a Western country where nutrition is not a problem. In fact, getting yourself not to be fat is a problem because there's so much nutrition around. Then the argument doesn't work anymore, because now biology has determined the woman, this young girl, to conceive and to have a child and go through this pregnancy. Nutrition is not a problem.
I never would have said. I mean, I totally agree with you that nutrition is a huge factor in how people develop and whether they develop completely or not.
But anyway, I think we both agree. We both agree
But I'm going to press you a little bit, not to be a stinker.
Press.
So are you saying that good nutrition gets us for a 9-year-old to be ready?
No, I'm saying this is an argument against the medical field who says you shouldn't get married while you're just very young. The arguments were initially proposed, as far as I remember, right? I may be wrong, but if I remember correctly, it's because of this. Because they're doing epidemiological studies where different societies, different cultures throughout globally, what is the harm being done when young women conceive early and have children? And the reasons that are bringing out on those studies is because of these nutritional deficiencies during pregnancy.
That might be the case. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I just remember that they said once she reached puberty, she wasn't necessarily.
Yeah. Anyway, can I ask you a different question altogether?
Yeah, go on.
I mean, we agree. I mean, just to summarize them, we agree
except
that
for
it is not just the biology and this age determines. There's a lot of complicating factors. And some people don't even get mature when they're even 30 years old, biologically and physically. Okay? So there are lots of variables involved. We were discussing in the context of the accusations of pedophilia to our Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Yeah, that's it. So this is totally unjustified, and in fact, it doesn't help bridge the gap.
Justified. That term and category, that's where I'll give you the presentism, because clearly everyone was married.
Young.
Girls are quite young, so there wouldn't have been the same moral maybe awareness or anything that it might be wrong. So I don't think we can paint him with that brush. The brush we can paint him with is that if he's getting guidance from the creator of the universe and a girl of 9 is not ready, then we can paint him with that brush.
Yeah, but as I said, the Prophet ﷺ, for example, didn't like to have garlic. It doesn't mean he imposes that on every individual. The Quran clearly sets guidance for Muslim man and woman, and it may also give guidance for the Prophet also, because he also received guidance from God how to conduct. He's reprimanded for, ignoring, for example, when some blind man came and wanted attention, and he was giving attention to the allies at that time, and God reprimanded him. So he's also a recipient of guidance, but of course, when God guides him, he's the best guide. But there can be some individual personal circumstances, which doesn't mean that needs to be imposed on every believer's man or woman. That's the point I'm making.
Let me ask you something completely hypothetical. So you can see where I come from in this argument, is that the fact that Muhammad married someone at 9 puts a little bit of question to me on whether he is who he claims he is.
Why would that be a question?
Because I don't think that someone getting divine direction. No, it's not presentism. It's
okay. I'll tell you why.
I don't think the girl was ready. I can't say that for an absolute.
First of all,
certainly probability.
If the father of the girl consider her to be able to get married. If the father of the girl, in fact, she was already engaged with someone else.
Yeah, that doesn't matter.
No. Just to say,
I grant that everyone at the time thought she was ready. Because that's how they did things. They married girls off young. They might have been marrying girls off that were too young to get married.
But the girl itself has a say in understanding in the relationship, which you somehow think, okay, the Prophet is the one who thought, and not the spouse that he's getting married to.
I mean, if I said something like this, sometimes girls get married off very young and they don't want to get married, and the fathers marry them off anyway. I wouldn't be saying anything strange, but I'd have to.
Happens.
We're not saying that means that's what the father did. I'm just saying we can't.
But in Islam it's different.
I'm just saying, obviously, there's a certain pressure.
But in terms of the guidelines in Islam, if a woman doesn't want to get married, the father cannot force that particular woman to get married to their choice.
You shouldn't, but they could. And they, as I said, they often
No, that's
do.
not the guidelines from Islam.
Islam is that was the guidelines.
Yeah, so Islam gives you a guidance where the woman's choice
there's obviously
taken
two parts
into account.
Muhammad. He's not just sticking I mean, obviously he's got a direct connection with God. I mean, he's special. He should be, I don't know, is he perfect? Is he perfect? He should be perfect. He should be.
He's the best example.
He's the best example. So you shouldn't find something that falls way outside of life.
But I don't see why this example of him marrying someone, because your opinion is she wasn't ready. That's your opinion. That's your assumption. But if she was ready, you will say it's okay.
I think I've clarified why it's my assumption, because I think it's highly unlikely that you could present me with a 9-year-old who's ready to get married.
I gave you example from Britain here, an 8-year-old.
You said someone who could conceive.
No,
a child.
it happened. It was in the papers.
Yeah,
I used to carry that paper cutting with me just to demonstrate my point.
I grant that someone could physically give birth at that age. I grant that quickly.
Sure.
There's no contention there. My question is, is her body ready for that? Is she mentally ready for that?
Sure. What if she was? Okay.
If she was, then there's no problem.
Sure. She lived.
It's not the age.
No. Let's look at something. It's important to actually get her perspective on it. What was her perspective in her marital life with the Prophet ﷺ? Because she outlived the Prophet. What was her perspective? That's important to understand. If you go
to be positive,
not seem to be absolutely positive. Absolutely positive. I mean, from her we got most of our religion. A lot of our religion and religious teaching from her. She passed